Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Hello again, everyone, and thanks for joining us here at KAKM for this Saturday's edition of Alaska Weather. Up first on the graphics here, we've got the fire danger from yesterday showing still quite a rather big area of extreme fire danger up over the north central interior to the Brooks Range there, and some scattered areas of extreme fire danger here over the Copper River Basin and back to the west down toward the southwest coast, with high fire danger down in across south central Alaska and the Kenai Peninsula areas, and still a little bit out here over the Seward Peninsula. Well, today you can see that's much improved. None back there over the Seward Peninsula. Still some extreme, but a lot smaller than it has been there up over the northern upper Yukon Valley areas, and extreme fire danger looks like right over the Matanuska Valley and the surrounding areas there, and the northern Copper River Basin with some areas of high fire danger in a much smaller area than it has been, but still extending back there toward eastern Norton Sound in those areas. That's due to the rainfall, cooler temperatures, higher humidities here, anywhere from 1 to 3/10 of an inch of rain fallen in the last 24 hours again today, as well as Friday over the Tanana Valley, with Chicken seeing over an inch of rain in the last 24 hours. Other areas seeing upwards of 2 inches of rain, and that heavy rainfall resulted in creeks and small streams to rise 2 to 4 feet. So there's still a flash flood watch out for the upper Tanana Valley and 40-mile country, as well as the eastern Alaska Range. This only out for about another half an hour, at which time they'll either cancel it or kick it out for even longer. But these yellow areas here, that's advisories for dense smoke. In the case of the northern Kuskokwim Valley, that's out until midnight tonight. And in the case of the central interior, the mid-Tanana Valley, the Yukon Flats, and the northern Koyukuk Valley, that's out until midnight tomorrow night. And that's for smoke-reducing visibilities at times to a mile or less here. Again, the heaviest conditions appear to be up to the north now, up over the upper Yukon Valley and into the eastern Brooks Range areas. Looking at from there, taking a look at the satellite imagery. Or no, forgot, today's the anniversary. It was 100 years ago today, Fort Yukon set Alaska's all-time record high temperature of 100 degrees, and June 27th, 1915. So here's to another 100 years. Now the satellite imagery showing yesterday we had low pressure here coming up to the Gulf of Alaska. Wet conditions into Kodiak Island, a couple of bands of rain and showers shifting up to the North Gulf Coast areas, and a lot of clouds in over the interior areas, kind of an area of showers here extending down into Bristol Bay and across the Alaska Peninsula. And then we had this system coming into the northern Bering Sea, heading southeastward, spreading rain onto the Yukon Delta coast and into Nunivak Island. Kind of a wet day yesterday across the Bering Strait coastal areas. And we'll see today that's continued to drop southward. The low center now later, or during the afternoon hours, right over Nunivak Island. The bulk of the moisture having already pushed down across the Alaska Peninsula, in over Bristol Bay, some areas of rain extending back to the northwest across the Yukon and Kuskokwim Delta areas, and a little bit of moisture into the eastern Aleutians, a break here over the central Aleutians, another front spreading rain into the far western Aleutians, but just some rain and fog. That front's falling apart. We still have low pressure here just east of Kodiak Island. And again, that's rotating several bands of showers and rain up to the North Gulf Coast today. Kodiak picking up about a third of an inch of rain in the last 24 hours, while Bristol Bay, the Alaska Peninsula, picked up anywhere from 1 to 2/10 of an inch of rain. So the heaviest rainfall again occurring here up over the eastern interior areas, the upper Tanana Valley, and some clouds, isolated showers here over the southeast coast, with some sun down over the southern areas breaking now, allowing temperatures to rise into the mid-60s this afternoon, with cooler conditions back to the north. Thunderstorms this afternoon occurred just south of Northway and up around the Chalitna area there northeast of Talkeetna, about developing over the Talkeetna Mountains. Also Sparavon to Sleepmute seeing some thunderstorm activity, as well as the isolated to scattered activity going on over the western Alaska Range and the Kuskokwim Mountains. But here's a low center that's sliding southeastward on its way to the Alaska Peninsula, bringing the rain into Bristol Bay and down across the Alaska Peninsula today. A lot of clouds out over the Aleutians. A few breaks around Adak and Atka into this area, high pressure, but fog and rain back toward Shemya. We'll see tonight that front just kind of dissipates out here into a trough with the next system winding up, promising to bring some small craft advisory winds into the western and central Aleutians tomorrow. But again, along for tonight, another band of moisture here, keeping it damp and unsettled there across the North Gulf Coast with some scattered isolated showers over south central Alaska. Showers for Kodiak Island. The bulk of that moisture now starting to rotate back around, and that'll begin to slide up toward Kodiak Island late tonight and into tomorrow. Partly to mostly cloudy for the Panhandle with some isolated showers there, mostly along the coast here with this trough, and scattered isolated thunderstorms over the interior here. Again, mostly to the south and less of that back to the north and to the west, where it'll be partly cloudy or mostly clear, dry anyway through this area. And again, this dense smoke advisories for the interior valleys from the northern Kuskokwim Valley up across the Yukon and the Tanana Valley, and the flash flood watch should be ended here in the next half hour. For the forecast for tomorrow, again, thunderstorm activity in the usual places here, the Kuskokwim Mountains down to the Kilbrooks and along the western Alaska Range, and some scattered activity here over the eastern interior. Otherwise, scattered showers, threat of a thunderstorm. Some of the taller clouds could develop into a thunderstorm over the Talkeetna Mountains, but mostly up along the Alaska Range. Areas of smoke again here over the interior with showers possibly scattered isolated over the eastern Brooks Range area, and then a break ahead of this next system that's sliding eastward, bringing a chance of rain and an increase in those south to southwest winds there along the western Arctic coast. Otherwise, high pressure out here over the Bering Sea, so look for areas of low clouds and fog with light winds over the Pribilof Islands. Winds will be lighter, diminishing tonight from that 15 to 35 mile per hour winds you're seeing today here across some areas of the Alaska Peninsula. Those winds will continue, but will be lighter tomorrow. Scattered showers along the Alaska Peninsula, Bristol Bay area, and rain out west of Amchitka Island. And then for the outlook for Monday, again, another band of moisture brings showers up to the North Gulf Coast, keeping a chance of rain or showers here from Yakutat in across Prince William Sound. Again, south central Alaska, scattered to isolated showers, partly to mostly cloudy conditions, which means there'll be some sun breaks at times here across southern Alaska. Same forecast for the southeast coast, partly to mostly cloudy or sunny with some isolated showers there. Scattered thunderstorms mainly over the eastern interior, upper Tanana Valley, 40-mile country from north way up toward Eagle, and then back into the mid-Tanana Valley, the White Mountain areas, and some scattered showers back over the north and western interior. And that system really weakening now, bringing just a trough, that front, washing out with just some scattered showers here along that from the Noatak Valley down across the Seward Peninsula to about St. Lawrence Island, then some showers following back behind, but not amounts pretty light. That whole system really weakening, high pressure holding here over the Bering Sea. So still areas of low clouds and fog over the Pribilof Islands with light winds down along the Alaska Peninsula. And light winds, dry conditions. This front really weak now, just a band of light rain there and fog across Shemya and Attu. Otherwise, again, the remainder of the Aleutians and most of the Bering Sea staying on the dry side. This system down here, again, rain for Kodiak Island, and that gets more showery up here along the North Gulf Coast. And for the temperatures this afternoon, upper 50s to mid 60s here over the Panhandle. Klawock up to 66. Stewart had 72. Juneau 59 this afternoon with mid 50s for the North Gulf Coast. A milder day into the lower to mid 60s here across the south central Alaska Cook Inlet, although Anchorage was up to 69, and 65 at Gulkana. Up in the Tanana Valley, 57 with rain much of the day here at Fairbanks, 53 at Delta. 10 degrees warmer with a little bit thinner cloud base there over toward Northway and less smoke, with 63 up at Fort Yukon, 68 there at Bettles, 66 in Tanana today, 57 in Anantuvik, Temperatures along the Arctic coast from the upper 30s to the mid 40s in that area, with upper 40s to lower 50s here over the northwest, and mostly in the 50s here over the southwest areas, but the coastal locations staying in the 40s. Out to the southwest, the Pribilofs in the mid to upper 40s this afternoon, and 45 to 50 here across all of the Aleutians. Upper 40s to lower 50s for the Alaska Peninsula, to mid 50s there for Kodiak Island and King Salmon. For the lows tonight, upper 40s to lower 50s here from the upper Yukon Valley southwestward to the Yukon and Kuskokwim Delta coastline areas. About the same, but not quite as mild here over south central Alaska and the Panhandle. Cooler 30s and 40s up along the North Slope and the Arctic coastal areas, with 40s for the Aleutians. And the highs for tomorrow, lower to mid 70s here, 70 degrees all the way down to the southwest coast, extending up the river valley there, and then east across the Tanana Valley, anywhere from lower 70s here through the Fairbanks area, Tok to Eagle, and then cooler conditions, a little more cloudiness and showers up there over the upper Yukon Valley, as well as, again, a lot of smoke here through the central and eastern interior up toward the eastern Brooks Range. Otherwise, the North Slope temperatures tomorrow in the 50s, 60s to lower 70s. Flying weather again. Thunderstorms possible here across the mountainous terrain of mostly southern and eastern Alaska. A lot less of that activity back to the north and west. IFR from the North Gulf Coast here to just west of Yakutat, in across western Prince William Sound, along the southern coast of the Kenai Peninsula, east side of Kodiak Island, kind of socked in at times with IFR, marginal VFR, possibly up into southern Cook Inlet and along the southeast coast. But most of the Panhandle will have a VFR day, as well as the interior here. Some marginal VFR still due to smoke up over the northeast interior, and spotty areas of that over the central interior as well, with marginal VFR, Bering Strait, and a huge area IFR out over the Bering Sea. Taking a look at the passes, Anaktuvuk again, another VFR day in store for both Anaktuvuk and Adigan on either approach. Lake Clark and Merrill, marginal VFR possible on the eastern entrances, otherwise VFR. For Rainy, marginal VFR east, otherwise VFR, slight chance of a thunderstorm in the afternoon. Same forecast for Windy, well, not quite the same. VFR flying there with a risk of an afternoon thunderstorm. Isabel, VFR, and Mentasta, VFR with risk of a thunderstorm. And Tanita should be VFR, or will be VFR. Portage, again, lowest conditions on the eastern entrance, marginal VFR through the pass, and hopefully VFR on the west side. If not, then marginal. And for Chilkoot and White, VFR. Looking at the freezing levels, about 4,000 feet up along the central Arctic coast, with a 6,000 foot level down to the Brooks Range. Also 6,000 feet here over south central Alaska down to Kodiak Island, and most of the Gulf of Alaska, with 8,000 to 10,000 feet across the southern southeast coast. And then warmer conditions out here over the Bering Sea and the central Aleutians. Icing threats tomorrow with that moisture rotating back up here into Kodiak Island, mostly above the 6,000 foot level there of the Rime variety, light to very isolated moderate. Also the North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound areas, scattered areas back to the west. Another batch of icing possible up over the northeast interior above about 7,000 feet. Very slight chances here over the southeast coast, and then above 10,000 feet with that frontal boundary way out to the west. Upper level wind flow chart. This is the upper low that came out of the northern Bering Sea yesterday and will track southeastward across Bristol Bay tonight to just south of Kodiak Island. That's going to keep Kodiak in that moist easterly flow with southwesterly jet here across the southern southeast coast. 3,000 foot winds showing, or 9,000 feet. Easterlies 15 to 20 knots across the Gulf of Alaska. Southeasterlies only 10 to 15 here for the Panhandle. Kind of a variable light wind condition in across southern Alaska to southwesterly 5 to 10 knots over the north central interior, but getting increasingly stronger here back to the west throughout the day tomorrow, up to 25 to maybe 35 knots back off the western Arctic coast, and then 25 knots down to St. Lawrence Island. And then for 3,000 feet, light variable winds here over southern Alaska, and about the same over the Panhandle, with those easterlies 25 to 30 knots here out of the Gulf of Alaska and across the Barren Islands. Northeast 15 across Bristol Bay, southwest up to 35 for the northern Bering Sea and the western Arctic coast, and pretty brisk easterlies here over the western Aleutians up to 30 knots, but only 15 for the central areas. And turbulence-wise, occasional light to isolated moderate chop here up around Cape Lisburne, Point Hope, extending down through the Bering Strait areas, and just clipping St. Lawrence Island there, an occasional moderate chop here with those stronger east winds from Amchitka Island out to Shemya and Attu. And then also those east winds here through the Barren Islands, Kamishak Bay, could result in some light to isolated moderate chop here for smaller aircraft in those areas. And after the break, I'll be back with a look at the marine forecasts.
Two parts hydrogen, 1 part oxygen. Water. A drop can indicate coming rain. A mist can be refreshing. A river can power an entire community. The ocean can inspire awe in all of us. The forces of nature that create waves also create an inviting opportunity for wholesome entertainment. But on almost any beach in the country, the waves that come crashing ashore could also hide a dangerous and deadly force, the rip current. Few natural events are as powerful as rip currents. The rip current is the coming together of several different forces just a few feet from the beach. First, a sandbar appears offshore. Waves that would normally not break until hitting the beach instead break on the sandbar. The water from the waves is trapped by the sandbar and cannot move naturally back to sea. This creates water that funnels a fast-moving current away from shore. In that short time, anything or anybody caught in this flow of water can be pulled out in the current. That is where the danger comes in.
When a person gets caught in one, maybe they don't even know they're in one, but what's going to happen is they're going to find themselves getting further and further away from shore. If they find themselves in this situation, the first thing they need to do is not panic. That's the #1 rule, don't panic.
Even the strongest and most skilled swimmers can get caught in a rip current. Nationally, more than 100 deaths a year are attributed to rip currents. About 75% of all lifeguard rescues are rip current rescues. Swimmers can find themselves in a hopeless situation if they don't recognize the signs of a rip current and know how to escape its grasp.
The rip currents are fairly slow to form. It depends on the shoreline. Some areas they're very persistent in one place, and other areas they move around all the time. In most beaches, they're not dangerous or present most of the time. It's only under fairly brief periods of time where they really become a threat to people and swimmers.
By knowing the different forces that cause a rip current, you can tell with some certainty where one is flowing away from the beach. But even with that skill, it's always good to swim near a lifeguard station and check with the lifeguard to see if a rip current exists where you plan to swim. The first sign is the sandbar offshore, where you'll see breaking waves in a shallow area. If you see a sandbar, start searching for the other elements that make up a rip current. If one exists, you'll see water and sea foam moving through breakers and farther offshore. You'll then see different colored water beyond the surf. The water will actually highlight the narrow currents.
There are a lot of subtle indicators that a rip current is present and that it may be a threat. Some of those indicators are more turbid or dirtier water that shows up with farther outside the surf zone particularly. You see it out beyond the breakers, and that's a good indicator that there may be a rip current present.
Rip currents can occur anywhere along the shoreline. Swimmers should be especially cautious around jetties or piers. But there is one warning sign that will leave you with no doubt. When you see warning flags, which can differ in look and style from beach to beach, it means one thing: don't swim. The rip current can kill.
The red flags are there for your safety. Each morning, each one of the beach patrol services on the Outer Banks has a supervisor who gets up and checks the water conditions. If we feel like the water conditions are such that are a danger to your personal safety, we put the red flags up.
Ultimately, there may be a time when you become caught in the rip current. If you're caught in a rip current, the one key rule to remember is to not swim against it. Swim parallel to the shore. You'll either swim out of the current or swim until the current itself dissipates.
A lot of people think that when they're in a rip current, they can't get back to shore, and that scares them. And they think that they can't get back to shore where they are and also all up and down the beach, and that's not true. It's just maybe 50 yards wide where the rip current is. If you swim parallel 50 yards one way or the other with the beach, it doesn't matter, then it's a lot easier to swim back to shore.
Most rip currents dissipate after about 50 to 75 yards. Then you can swim parallel to the shore. Do not hesitate to wave to get help. Drop by drop, the ocean's water is enjoyable, powerful, and at times can be dangerous. The beaches of the Atlantic are some of the most beautiful in the country and provide enough physical challenges and pure fun to enjoy without risking your life by swimming in a rip current. Study the facts and be careful. Parents should make themselves aware of the conditions of the water before letting their children swim. And when children are swimming, parents should keep a sharp eye on them all the time. We want you to enjoy your time in the waters of the Atlantic. But before you do, check the conditions. Make sure no rip current or any other dangerous conditions exist by checking with the lifeguard.
I think the best thing that people can do is always find out where the lifeguard stand is, swim in front of the lifeguard stand, and when you get onto the beach, before you get in the water, walk up to the lifeguard, ask them, are there any problems with the water that day?
When you come down on vacation, you just really need to be smart about the ocean. Speak to your lifeguard, and by understanding is your best defense against this ocean, and understanding can be talking to that lifeguard.
Swim with a buddy, swim in your ability, and don't take chances. We want everybody to come down and have a good time and leave safe.
It's an easy thing to do, and when you are sure the water is safe, the ocean will be yours to cool off in and enjoy for years to come.
Welcome back. We're looking at the marine forecast here for the north coast. Southeasterlies 10 to 15 knots with seas 5 to 6 feet. Central and south coast northwest winds at about 10 knots and pretty light winds over the inside waters as well. Lynn Canal area, northern Lynn Canal, increasing to 20 knots in the afternoon with those seas building to 4 feet. And that'll be about the same pattern for Monday here across all of the inside waters northwest here for Clarence Strait. Light southerlies there for Stevens Passage with seas 2 feet or less, and then those afternoon winds to 20 knots for Lynn Canal. South winds light here for the north coast and light westerly breeze here for the south coast. And for the North Gulf Coast, small craft advisories out for tomorrow for southeast winds at 25 knots, southeast up to 20 knots there for Prince William Sound, easterlies 20 knots for the western Gulf Coast across the Barren Islands into Kamishak Bay and down Shelikof Strait. Cook Inlet northeasterlies 15 to 20 knots. And then for Monday, northeast winds still a little brisk here for Shelikof Strait, but lighter for the Kamishak Bay, Barren Islands area. Southeast at about 20 knots there for the North Gulf Coast. Easterlies at 15 for Prince William Sound. Light southeast winds, northern Cook Inlet. And for the water southwest of Kodiak Island, light variable winds tomorrow. Otherwise, north to northeast, 15 knots for the Alaska Peninsula, and northeast, 15 for Bristol Bay. And then the outlook for Monday, light variable winds here on the Pacific side of the peninsula. Northeasterlies 15 knots there for the Bering Sea side of the Alaska Peninsula, taking a more easterly direction there across Bristol Bay, but all light winds. And for the eastern Aleutians tomorrow, northerlies on the light side coming down to 10 to 15 knots. But out here to the west, those east winds on the increase. Small craft advisories from west of Adak all the way out to Shemya. And otherwise, the central Aleutians looking easterly at about 15. And the outlook for Monday for the eastern Aleutians, variable to northeast, 10 to 15 knots, so light winds in that area. Winds coming down now, less gradient, east to southeast, 20 knots for the western and central Aleutian areas, easterlies 15 to 20, with seas running 4 to 9 feet. And for the southwest coast, northerlies 15 to 20 knots here, strongest north of Nunivak Island. Southwest, 20 knots for St. Lawrence Island, extends back into the northern Bering Sea. The Pribilofs, northerlies at about 15 tomorrow with 5-foot seas. And those are even lighter with high pressure just to the west there. Look for north winds at 10 knots there, with north to northwest 10 to 15 knots for the southwest coast. Still this southwest wind across the northern Bering Sea up to St. Lawrence Island, roughly at about 20 knots, with those seas running 5 to 8 feet. Up along the Arctic coast, the central and eastern coastline, easterly winds here the entire way at about 15 knots. Southeast 20 knots for the western Arctic coast, those seas at about 4 feet. And then small craft advisories, winds increasing 25 to 30 knots here from Wales up to Cape Beaufort, with the strongest winds there from Cape Thompson to Cape Beaufort. Those 30-knot winds don't look like it'll be gales right at this point in time, with seas 5 to 6 feet. And then those drop back as that whole system weakens, but still small craft advisories here, Cape Beaufort to Cape Thompson and Wales to Cape Beaufort, southerlies at about 20 knots. Southwest here to south on the central coast, and then east winds at about 20 knots for the entire stretch of the eastern coastline there to Demarcation Point. And looking at tonight's weather again, the flash flood watch set to end at 6 p.m. here for the upper Tanana Valley and 40 Mile Country, as well as the eastern Alaska Range. Otherwise, we're going to have scattered showers, isolated thunderstorms here through the eastern interior, back along the western Alaska Range this evening, maybe the Kuskokwim. Another band of rain and showers lifts up to the North Gulf Coast for rainy conditions from about Yakutat eastward to Cordova, especially western Prince William Sound, the southern Kenai Peninsula areas. Showers here across western Cook Inlet up to the Alaska Range, and showers from Kodiak Island. Partly to mostly cloudy with scattered isolated showers for south central Alaska. Dry conditions up here to the north and back to the west as this area of rain finally slides south of the Alaska Peninsula. Starts to make a return flow back up to Kodiak Island for more rain tomorrow. Showers over the interior. And again, the thunderstorms over the eastern interior, scattered isolated back to the west and south. And then again, more showers on the North Gulf Coast. Have a great evening.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.